Hey guys, in this week's episode, Chris and I are going to talk about Palm Springs. But before that, we're going to talk about The Old Guard on Netflix, as well as Greyhound, the new Tom Hanks film. So,
is the Greyhound about dog racing?
No, it's about bus racing.
Okay, yeah. All right. Welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is a man who feels like he's reliving the same podcast over and over again. Mike, how you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. At this point, I should be pretty good at reviewing Palm Springs then.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode.
By the way, if you guys are not new to the show, you will have noticed that Justin has not spoken up. That is because he's gone this week. He is getting married. So congratulations to him.
Yay!
And we will see him back shortly.
Yeah.
But if this is your first time listening, then if you listen to another episode, you'll meet a guy named Justin. But normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, where we talk about film and TV news or movies and TV that we've been watching. And then we'll move into our feature review this week, where we're discussing the new film out on Hulu, Palm Springs.
One of the things we like to do here on the Casual Cinecast, when we're not reviewing the same movie over and over again, we do movies from the Criterion Collection, and each one of the hosts picks a movie from the Criterion Collection, and then we put it out to you, the listeners, to vote on it, and whatever movie wins is the movie review. It's a lot of fun. Next week, we're going to finish up, hopefully. Everything's kind of in limbo right now, but hopefully we'll finish up the Apu trilogy, and then we can do another vote. You know, we can put it out to the listeners again. But, that's all TBD. We'll see what happens. But make sure while you're doing it, you can catch up with the Apu trilogy with the first two that have just been put out recently. So, yeah.
That is, of course, Pather Panchali and Aparajito, which both episodes I'm really quite proud of. So check them out. Let us know what you think. And by the way, if you want to follow, and subscribe to our podcast, you can do so on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And of course, whatever podcast platform, whatever that you use, rate us 5 stars. That'd be nice. Preferably in iTunes or something like that. Leave us some constructive feedback.
Rate us 5 stars and wish Justin, a happy marriage.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect occasion.
Yeah. All
right. And with that, I guess let's go ahead and just kick off News on the March. What do you say, Chris?
Let's do this.
News on the March!
All right, Mike. So it actually feels like for the first time since the pandemic, this weekend actually had quite a few big releases. One of them we'll be talking about in the main section. One of them you watched, and then I think two of them we'll be talking about, but you only watched this one, Greyhound. What did you think of it? Yeah,
so Greyhound is the new Tom Hanks World War II thriller. It actually just recently premiered on iTunes, Apple TV. And actually, a lot of people don't have Apple TV, so I feel like this movie is going to go mostly under the radar for a lot of people.
That's why I haven't watched it.
Yeah, well, I got a new iPhone recently.
Yeah.
Because my other one fell in the pool. And whenever I got a new one, they offer a free year of Apple TV. So I just signed up for that. So Greyhound. This film is aggressively mediocre. It's made well. It looks good in a lot of places, and it seems pretty accurate, And it seems like in the 90s, this movie would have been a hit. Back when submarine movies were a really big thing. Mm-hmm. But now it doesn't really feel like it brings anything new to the table. The whole movie basically is Tom Hanks is in charge of this boat that is basically made to combat U-boats, German U-boats. Mm-hmm. They're going over the part of the ocean where basically there's no way they can get any kind of air support. And so it's just this big, long stretch of, ocean that they have to just kind of get through as fast as they can, while there is a pack of U-boats basically picking off boats one by one. It's a good enough movie. I'm not going to say it's bad. It's actually, I enjoyed it.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's a movie that would have, been a good like Memorial Day theatrical release or something like that, right? It's a good dad movie. Like, that's like the best way I can describe it, I think, is that it's not Dunkirk. Like, it doesn't, it's not striving to be as like artistically poignant as Dunkirk, I don't think. It's just trying to be a traditional, guy in a hard situation in a war, pulling through kind of movie. It's kind of one of those feel good about the military kind of action movies,
Yeah, like a typical kind of Tom Hanks film, like he's never done a World War II movie. Seems like he's really stretching his his acting.
Oh, but, sure, yeah. Completely foreign to him.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why my disappointment comes in, right? Because when you think of Tom Hanks in World War II, you think of Saving Private Ryan, you think of Band of Brothers, or at least I do.
Yeah.
And this does not hold a candle to those things. It's more along like your lines of something like a Hacksaw Ridge type situation, only not very violent.
Right, okay.
It's kind of a forgettable war movie, you know what I mean? It's a serviceable one, but not an exceptional one.
Okay. Yeah, well then I'm glad I don't have Apple TV. Well, I mean, like I would watch it, but that way I don't have to. The choice has been made for me, essentially.
Sure. I don't think this is going to be the movie that brings Apple TV into the conversation with the giants like Hulu and Netflix and Disney Plus,
Right.
Yeah. So that about covers my thoughts on Greyhound. It's decent. If you like war movies, you like World War II, adventure, action, suspense thrillers, then this is, like I said, it's serviceable. It's not a bad movie by any means. It's just not the grittiness and the realism and the heaviness and the importance of some of Tom Hanks's other World War II projects.
So on a scale from Pearl Harbor to Saving Private Ryan, where does this fit?
That's a good question. Definitely better than Pearl Harbor. Closer to the Saving Private Ryan range, but
okay.
But
like kind of in the middle, where it's a little bit more like patriotic, as opposed to. I mean, I think Saving Private Ryan's very patriotic, but in a different way than something like Pearl Harbor, where it's Norman Rockwell patriotic.
I mean, this is sort of like the kind of World War II movie that like doesn't tell you anything new. It's just sort of presented and edited down and trimmed down to a very breezy, for lack of a better word, thriller.
Mm-hmm.
It's not interested in any of the soldiers who are there or what their state of mind is. It's all about Tom Hanks's character and this captain. So we're not even like with the everyman. We're in like this like, for some reason, Tom Hanks is playing someone Tom Hanks's age, but he is trying to get married to someone that he loves, and he's also getting his first like captain's command. And this is like his first mission as captain in this movie, and yet he's like 70 or however old Tom Hanks is. So it felt like it should have been a role for like someone in their 40s or 30s maybe. But then again, maybe that's not historically accurate. I don't know. Tom Hanks, like I think, tends to pride himself in that, but it feels like maybe he wanted himself in this role, and maybe it should have gone to someone else. I think. Does that make sense? Yeah,
it could have been that the studio is like, we'll make this. We'll give you money if you're the star, as opposed to somebody else.
Sure. Right. Yeah. That makes sense. But that's my major complaint is I feel like Tom Hanks is not cut out for these kinds of roles anymore. It's not necessarily believable anymore.
Yeah. I guess that kind of makes sense. He could be the guy that everybody reports to type of thing.
Well, I mean, he plays the captain, but I don't know. There are things they do in this movie to make the situation seem more intense for the captain than I feel like they needed to. Mm-hmm. Anyways, we tried to move on earlier. Let's move on now. Greyhound. It's okay.
Yeah, and he's 64. He's almost 70. Woo.
Yes, and you see it. You can tell.
All right.
So the other thing, you alluded to it earlier. I think you and I both watched this. There is a new Charlize Theron action movie on Netflix right now called The Old Guard.
Yeah, so I watched this weekend just to kind of catch up with it. I wasn't super excited about it, but it was, it was a big release. We haven't really gotten a lot of those types of big release movies. I think Extraction may be the only one from this year that I can really think of.
Yeah.
And I saw that you'd watched it, so I was like, I'll watch it as well, and then maybe we can talk about it on the podcast. But Yeah, I like Charlize Theron quite a bit. I actually think she's really good in this movie. I think she's kind of in search of her John Wick franchise, because she's done things like Atomic Blonde and those other movies that have that kind of gung fu action and stuff like that that's in here.
Yeah, she's been kicked out of the Furiosa role, it seems.
Yeah, she seems upset. I doubt that movie ever gets made. I'm going on record now because, anyways. But that's off the point. I hope it gets made, but I don't think it will.
It took him like 14 years to make Fury Road, so...
Yeah, so we'll see. There'll just be rumors and forever.
Yeah.
So I do think that's kind of what this is like it is going to be a franchise, I believe. I'm almost 100% sure that this will get another movie. And I wouldn't be upset if it does, but like I wasn't super impressed. I thought that there was things that could have been done better. There's some... cool action sequences that I enjoyed, a couple of those, and then Charlize Theron's really good, and there's a couple of like what I would call inclusion moments, and in fact I think this whole movie does a really good job of being inclusive, and I enjoyed those. There's like a confession of love that I really enjoyed. I thought that was really good. But what did you think, Mike?
Yeah, everything you said is pretty much spot on. I think Charlize Theron is really great in this. I think if I'm being honest, that's the end of the good performances in the movie. And I don't mean that the rest of them are terrible, except for the main girl that they find. The new addition to the squad. I've never seen her in anything else that I could remember.
Did you see If Bill Streets Could Talk?
No, I didn't, actually. And so before I call her a bad actress, let me just caveat and say, in this movie. Because that's where I was going with that. I don't think I've seen her in anything else enough to really judge her. But man, I don't believe anything she says in this movie.
Yeah.
Go on.
What you said about Tom Hanks earlier, I think, kind of applies to Kiki Lane is her name.
Yeah.
And I liked her if Bill Street Could Talk, but she's playing a much different role.
A lot is being asked of her in this. Like, she's the audience surrogate.
Right.
And so, I don't know. I mean, she's asked to deliver some stuff that I don't believe, but mainly because I feel like she doesn't believe. So let me just say that if you don't want to know anything about The Old Guard, then I just go watch it real quick. It's free. But basically what it's about is these people who are essentially immortals, and they have been living an indeterminable amount of time for quite a long time, and they just seem to go around doing mercenary stuff to try and better the world. And you're right, it's very inclusive. It has people from all over the globe that just kind of become immortals from time to time, and it doesn't seem to care about gender or race or anything like that. Pretty cool. I like that aspect of it, right? Like, they don't understand this gift. They don't know what causes it. It just happens. And the people that are your fellow immortals are the people you kind of have to stick with. Kind of like another movie we'll be talking about later. But I think where this movie kind of falls apart is the direction. As I said earlier, I didn't believe a lot of the dialogue. I think a lot of the action scenes are pretty decent, but it's not filmed particularly well. It's not a good-looking movie. It looks pretty cheaply made, like a cheap, Netflix movie. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you get Charlize Theron behind it, you need to make this like an A-list feeling movie. Like, you need to make this a big deal. And it feels like Charlize Theron could be replaced with some generic TV actress, and this would just be another generic Netflix release.
Yeah, I do agree with it. I do think when I watched it, I felt the Netflixness of it. And if I watched this movie in the theater before it was released on Netflix, I don't know, like, is it because I watched it on Netflix that I'm like, oh, this feels like a Netflix movie?
No, I think there's a certain a film language, like some of the Netflix stuff has. It just feels kind of rushed.
Off. Yeah.
Yeah. Quick. Like the art direction's not fully there. Like, the costumes aren't super great. Like, the makeup's not super great. The sets aren't super great. Like, the acting is there because Charlize Theron's there, and she's giving it her all, but like the villain's a little mustache twirly.
The villain's pretty awful.
Oh, but I will say, I don't remember his name, but the one of the dudes on Charlize Theron's like Old Guard team, he gives a monologue about like what happens whenever people know about your immortality.
Oh, yeah.
And you try to have a family, and why it's better to just leave the family behind versus like trying to keep them in your life as an immortal. Mm-hmm. I think that was probably the best thing in the whole movie, to be honest with you.
It's a great moment. Yeah, that dialogue that they have, the monologue is really well done. You're right.
I sound pretty negative about this movie so far, and ultimately I am. Like, I think it's probably like a 2.5 star out of 5 star movie. Mm-hmm. but it has some moments where I really enjoyed myself.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know more about these people. More than I wanted to watch what they're doing now, I wanted like an entire season dedicated to like their timeline and what they've been doing for thousands of years. Because like there's one speech where one dude's like, before they became friends or lovers or whatever, like they spent thousands of years killing each other or something.
Yeah, because I believe they were in the Crusades. Like one of them's Muslim, and they just spent a long time just killing each other, being on the other side, opposite sides of the Crusades. Yeah,
which is
that
awesome.
is interesting. Yeah.
Like the stuff that's implied here and the stuff that's like not on screen is always the most interesting stuff in the movie. In my opinion.
I do think it's going to feel like a TV show because, I mean, it depends on what happens and, whether we get another movie. I'm pretty sure we will.
I see no way we couldn't.
Yeah. I think they went into this with the idea that they are going to make more. And I do think they are going to explore some of those things that you're talking about. That is exciting to me.
Yeah. If they just sink a little bit more money into the budget for art direction and things like that, more impressive sets, more impressive cinematography, this franchise could have something going on, I think. It could. I mean, it's better than like Fantastic Beasts or whatever,
For sure. I think it makes a better pilot than it does a movie, if that makes sense.
That's probably true. You could probably chop this up into like 2 episodes of a TV show.
Yeah, and then you get the cliffhanger at the end, So like, I do think that does make sense. But yeah, I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, I will watch the next one for sure, and I just, little fixes here and there. Just try a little harder on certain things to make it seem a little less cheap Netflixy. I just made up a word, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so so that's the end of all my thoughts on the Old Guard. It's okay. A lot of okay stuff this week.
Yeah, that does make sense. Both of them are well, at least the Old Guard. I do think it's worth watching, especially.
Me too.
Just it's good background. Like you can get the idea of the plot played in the background. You don't necessarily have to sit down. It's a good one to be on your iPhone with. Even I'm never like the person that's like be on your iPhone, but you can kind of catch what's going on, like watching it second screen, right?
Yeah, it's one of those movies where this never happens anymore. But like the expression back in the day where like people would be like, if I was flipping through channels, I would stop and watch it. Yeah.
Actually, it's a good cable movie.
Yeah. But in the age of streaming, there is undoubtedly something you could find that's better to watch than this.
Right.
But anyways, anything else you want to say about the Old Guard?
Nope. I think that kind of wraps it up.
Okay, cool. Well, let's just move on straight into our review of Palm Springs. What do you say?
I say yay.
I said it twice because of the repetition in the theme of the plot. You understand?
I got it.
Okay, all right.
It's gonna be a beautiful wedding.
Here you are, standing on the precipice of something so much bigger than anyone here. But always remember, you are not alone.
I don't think that we met. I'm Sarah.
Niles.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice.
Run, rabbit, run!
Niles?
Don't come in here! It's gonna be a beautiful wedding.
Good day so far? Today, tomorrow, it's all the same.
What is going on? Hey, get out of the water!
Guess you followed me. It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about.
That I might have heard about.
Yeah. The second you fall asleep, it all just goes back to the start.
I drove all the way back home to Austin, and I still woke up here.
One time I smoked a bunch of crystal and made it all the way to Equatorial Guinea. It was a huge waste of time.
Well, then what's the point of living?
We kind of have no choice but to live.
No, I'm gonna get out of this.
Suit yourself. See you tomorrow.
So now what do we do?
You just have to embrace the fact that nothing matters.
Do you sleep with people in here?
Great question. I have, but it takes a lot of work. May I cut in? It's the first dance. And that's a deal breaker?
That didn't work. Let's waste some time.
All right, thanks for joining us in our Palm Springs review. I'm glad you guys made it. Now, we will be starting out with a non-spoiler section. So if you have not seen the movie, you can hang around for a little bit. We're going to talk about the movie vaguely, just general impressions, etc. And then after that, we will go ahead and move into spoilers, but it will all be timestamped for you. So feel free to hop around however you feel like. All right, so Palm Springs was directed by Max Barbacow. I assume I'm saying that right. It stars Andy Samberg, Kristen Milioti, and J.K. Simmons. The IMDb synopsis says, when carefree Niles and reluctant maid of honor Sarah have a chance encounter at a Palm Springs wedding, things get complicated as they are unable to escape the venue, themselves, or each other. I like it. It's vague.
Yeah. Talking about spoilers will be tough in this one.
Yeah, I know. It will be super tough. In fact, I think we should just kind of go ahead and say that if you haven't seen the trailer at least...
yeah, stop watching now.
Stop watching because it's one of those time loop movies. Groundhog's Day, Edge of Tomorrow. There you go. I think we have to spoil that to even begin to talk about it, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, there we go. It's spoiled for you. Chris.
It's spoiled. Done. Yes. So, this may be my favorite new movie of 2020.
Yeah?
We haven't had a lot of movies to kind of go over. There have been some really good ones. It was certainly my favorite comedy and feel-good movie of the year, which I'm almost certain we haven't gotten any of those, or very few of them.
Yeah.
I guess the Will Ferrell movie, but I didn't watch that one, the Eurovision one.
Yeah, I am thinking about watching it.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't heard great things. Anyways, Palm Springs is a lot of fun, and I think there's a lot of depth to it that I really enjoyed. I like Andy Samberg. How do you feel about Andy Samberg, Mike?
I went through a long period of not liking him during his Saturday Night Live days, but that's probably par of the course for most people on Saturday Night Live after the 90s. For some reason, I go through phases where they have to prove themselves to me. Getting on Saturday Night Live is not enough to win me over,
Yeah.
And I didn't really like Hot Rod when it came out. So I've always actually kind of been, I don't want to say anti-Andy Samberg, because that's stronger feelings than I feel like I've ever had towards him. But I've never been a fan.
Yeah.
But I've never despised him either.
Makes
he's
sense.
not, I don't wish ill will on him like I do like Tom Green whenever Freddy Got Fingered came out. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I like Andy Samberg, and I think maybe I was indifferent towards him until Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I just kind of...
That's what I was going to say, is Brooklyn Nine-Nine is kind of where my opinion started to shift and turn around.
I watched Hot Rod. I remember very little of that. I like Popstar, and then he has these two HBO specials. I don't know if you've ever seen them. One is like 7 Days in Hell.
Oh, the tennis one with Kit Harington?
Yeah, and then one's the Tour de Pharmacy, which is basically about cyclists that are drugged. They're actually really, really good. They're about 30 to 45 minutes long each, so they're easy watches, but they're really funny. I really enjoy both of those. So, I came around on Andy Samberg, and I think he's really charming. I like him in this movie especially. I think in this movie we actually get to see some more depth and some more range in his acting that I hadn't seen from him before, where he actually has a character.
Well, yeah, it feels like he's actually acting in a real movie versus like a Saturday Night Live type character.
Right. It's a difference between I like Will Ferrell quite a bit, but he's doing caricatures most of the time.
Yeah, and here
right? Andy
Samberg is being a leading man.
Yeah, and a real person.
Yeah.
Real character type thing. And I do appreciate that, and I enjoyed seeing him stretch his wings like that. I thought Kristen Milioti was really good in this as well. I thought the chemistry between her and Andy Samberg was excellent. You get the two people that don't get along, or you don't get this kind of chemistry, this movie flops and doesn't feel right at all. But I think there's this great chemistry. I want to hang out with them more, after watching this movie, I'm like, let's go do some more Days Over again, and just see what else we can get up to. And at that same time, it's this comedy that feels lighthearted, but has depth to it and meaning. I personally saw it as, and I guess we've kind of spoiled it. It's a time loop movie, but and Andy Samberg's essentially reliving the same day over and over again, and then Christine Milioti's character joins him in this time loop, and I found the way they set all that up really interesting, the fact that he's been living in these days the same day over and over again, and we we're like basically at the point of Groundhog Day at the very end of the movie where he's figured everything out at the beginning of this one with Andy Samberg, you know. Anyways, I think that there's a great depth to this, like a metaphor for depression even, you know, like in getting pulled out of depression, you know, doing the same day over and over again, you know. Lots of great stuff in here. I laughed and I really enjoyed it. I don't know how you feel about it yet, but I really hope you liked it as much as I did.
Is that my cue?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it too. I liked it much better than I thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. Andy Samberg is really charming in this. He's up to the task of being like a romantic leading man. Their chemistry together is like infectiously fun. You know, like you just don't want this movie to be over when it's over. It feels so short. It's a blast, you know, from beginning to end. And I laughed the whole time. I will say, if I am being a little critical, like with most romantic comedies, I feel like the least good part is the third act. Not because it wasn't good, but just because the rest of the movie is so satisfying that wrapping something like that up is tricky.
Yeah.
And I mostly like the end. Let me just say that. But like, I just wanted a little bit more. And that's because I was having such a good time. I wasn't quite ready for the adventure to be over yet. And then they were trying to end it.
Yeah. And it's not as exciting as like when they're like discovering new things that they can do, you know, like in the time loop.
Sure, exactly. So if that's my biggest complaint, then I would say, then yeah, I think this is a solid movie. I think I agree with you that this is probably the best movie of 2020 so far, in my opinion. Or at least certainly the movie that like I've had the most fun with.
Yeah.
Maybe not best, but I will go out on a limb to say this is my favorite romantic comedy in years.
Yeah. We don't get a lot of romantic comedies anymore in general.
Yeah, and when we do, they're kind of like Crazy Rich Asians.
Well, I like Crazy Rich Asians, actually.
But, Crazy Rich Asians is a good movie, but it's like celebrating rich people, and it's got all this like, studio fluff behind it, and it's like a lot of overly... I
see what you mean.
It's like overly romanticized, and it's kind of like made to be like this like cultural touchstone, and it has a lot of baggage with it. It's just this Palm Springs is just a simple, sweet, heartfelt romantic comedy that's clever. And really what it is it's just spunky. Yeah. And it's got heart. Every scene is funny, and like even when it's not funny, it's got heart. You know, I don't know. I feel there's a difference between this and most of the romantic comedies that I can think of, at least major ones. Yeah,
I see what you mean, like by Crazy Rich Asians, made at the studio, lots of money. You can see the money on the screen, where this movie feels like, you know, they shot it in 21 days, or, you know, something extremely low like that. It was like a first-time director. You know, they brought in the Lonely Hearts Club. It probably was not filmed for very much money. So this one feels scrappy. You know, like they have to fight for everything they get, and it feels like they're having a good time while they're doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't feel like the studio ordered a romantic comedy. We got to get one out.
Right.
And also what I will say is like the twist, like you said, this is the movie where at the very beginning of the movie, the guy already has everything figured out that he needs to do to make the most of the day.
Right.
So like there's no figuring out like when's the dude gonna fall? When's the embarrassing speech gonna happen? When like how can I learn to fix these things one at a time and become a better man? This is already about a man who's like jaded and bored, and he's just given up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a much more interesting place to start, because you still get the foot into the door whenever she begins her loop. Yeah. So it finds a way to take a premise that may feel tired and keep it fresh.
Yeah, and put a new spin on it. You know, like the two of them, like I was talking about earlier, like I really saw this movie as like, you know, going through life depressed, right? And then you meet somebody, and maybe this is like a manic pixie girl trope or whatever. And I think that, but like you meet somebody and they pull you out of that depression, or even at some point they wallow in it with you, and then they're like, no, I'm done. I'm not going to live this way anymore. And I found that really profound and moving. And
I agree. You know, in a lot of these movies, the person has to go through it alone. You know what I mean? Or someone who doesn't understand their point of view. But here you can expand that upon this metaphor of like living in a certain state of mind with another person for a long time, and the rest of the world stays the same. And they really do a lot with the premise, I guess I should say. Mm-hmm. But I find it really difficult to respond without spoilers. So I think we should move into spoilers as soon as possible.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so long story short, I give this movie a solid 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's great. Watch it. One of the most charming movies of the year, and one of the best romantic comedies in recent memory for me.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, 3.5, 4, like a solid 4, I think, is really good. So,
Spoilers starting now for Palm Springs.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any more cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
Okay, so let me respond a little bit in more detail with what you kind of asked me earlier.
yeah.
You said that this is sort of like a state of depression, how one person can live in one state for so long and another person can as well, but eventually one person needs to decide to move on. And in this case, Andy Samberg has to decide whether or not he wants to pull himself out of this rut, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And what's important in life. Is it easy because you're used to it and it's comfortable? Or should you go towards life, the unknown, the scary parts? That's what life is supposed to be, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I found that quite good. And I think they used the time loop scenario to actually paint a pretty interesting character in Andy Samberg. Not just like the repetition of like the Judd Apatow man baby has to grow up once real life hits, you know, like that's a common theme in Judd Apatow movies.
Right.
And that's where I thought this movie would go. And it kind of does, but I think it kind of captures that idea of arrested development and prolonged adolescence and does something more with it.
Agreed. I think when we catch up with Andy Samberg at the very beginning of this movie, you know, he's already jaded. He's learned, like, he may be a man-child, but he's got like a depression that's no longer like, he feels a lot older than any like man-child or like more mature even than a lot of the Judd Apatow versions of the, you know, the man-child.
Right.
I just watched King of Staten Island over the weekend too, and I like the Andy Samberg character in this better.
Yeah, that's like my main thing. I usually find Judd Apatow's movies interesting even if I don't love them.
Yeah.
And I really want to see King of Staten Island, but much like Andy Samberg before him, I don't like what's his face.
Yeah, actually, we should have talked about this movie, but like, I think you'll like him. He's a charming guy. He's in this other movie called Pete Davidson is the guy we're talking about, but he's in another movie called Good Time Adolescence or
Big Time Adolescence.
Big Time Adolescence. And I enjoyed that one as well. I think in both of those, he's kind of just playing himself. But I think he's a charming guy playing himself. Anyways, but yeah, I like Andy Samberg in this character or in this movie, and the depth that you kind of get from him, and the way he relates to the girl, especially once they start. They get their montage, you know, where they do all sorts of crazy stuff.
Oh man, sidebar! I love the part whenever like they go into the bar with like that dance number, and then like.
Yes.
She jumps onto him and he grabs her and they both just start flipping everyone off around them and then run out the door.
Okay. So what is your best montage moment? Is that the best montage moment, I guess?
Oh man. Montage wise, probably that made me laugh the most just because like the confidence in which they flipped everyone off and like the joy they got from it. And like everyone else doesn't really care that much and they're just kind of like, all right.
And how many days did they like have to spend like working on that routine, you know, like
yeah, exactly, just to go in there and do that to those like day drinkers.
Yeah, my favorite moment I think has got to be the airplane. It's the biggest moment of the bunch.
Or
But
like when they steal the airplane and like they're just drinking and like flying the airplane
and then it just crashes. That or the wedding cake bomb.
Oh, yeah. I used to be a bomb guy.
Yeah. And what did he say? Like something about her accent. Judging by her accent, she's from Russia or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an accent from nowhere, like indeterminable accent or something like that.
Yeah, it is pretty great. But yeah, so it's really joyful, and then you know you get these undertones, and there's like this moment where Andy Samberg is talking to Christine Melodi's character, and they just killed J.K. Simmons' character, which we haven't talked about J.K. Simmons yet. But he's like, no, you know, like they don't remember it, but we do. Being like horrible to people like hurts you more than it does them. And I really found that fascinating and poignant, you know, like even if they don't remember it, you're going to remember it. And that is a damage all in its own, you know, like remembering those things.
Yeah. Well, and also the cleverness in which when she hears that, she doesn't necessarily think about being horrible to like, you know, the cops or whatever. She's thinking about the horrible thing she's doing to her sister.
Yeah,
every morning when she wakes up. So like whenever he says that to her, that's whenever she leaves for a while, like they're in the act 2 to go better herself, is because his words hit home with her. She knows that she doesn't want to hurt people, and she does feel terrible every morning, so she has to break the loop. And I thought it was cool how they tied that in. Like he's looking at it as like, yeah, this buffoonery is fun for us for a little bit, but you don't want to be horrible to people for too long.
Yeah, and it actually made... Actually, that just clicked with me. I had not put that together. Like, I always saw that as like, like, stop being a jerk on the internet. Like, they may not know who you are, but you're going to remember that, like, but that actually makes perfect sense. And especially with the girl and waking up to, like, even if her sister never actually finds out, she's going to remember what she did, and that's going to be its own scar. And that's really fascinating,
There was even the scene when she confronts the groom about it after the fact, and even he gets a little bit more depth than normal, like, because, he starts to cry, and he's like, oh, man, I'm just a cheating asshole, just like my dad,
Yeah.
That right there is depth and damage to that. That's interesting, right? The groom had his own problems with this. Like, his own family had, like, drama like this, you know what I mean? So it's like, every little character gets so much. Mm-hmm. Even, like, some of the characters that we come back to later on in the movie, like the old lady who, like, she's like, that must be the best wedding speech I've ever heard, or whatever.
And I've heard a ton of them.
Yeah, and then, like, at the end, she comes back and has a little interesting,
Like, maybe she's part of the time loop.
Exactly, yeah. And then, oh, that's so cool,
Yeah.
And real quick, you mentioned earlier, we haven't talked about J.K. Simmons, and let me just say that, as usual, every time he's on screen, he steals the show.
Yeah, he's so great in this.
God, like when his son is watering the dog shit. It's so funny.
Yeah, and he's so, like, that scene's so great because we don't really see J.K. Simmons hunting Andy Samberg that much, right? We do, like, get a montage of all the horrible things J.K. Simmons done to him. So we get this general idea of it, but then when he goes and visits him, this is another great moment. I do wish they kind of had to flesh J.K. Simmons out maybe just a little bit more.
That's what I'm saying. This movie's so breezy and fun that they almost made it too breezy.
Yeah.
Like, give me like 15 more minutes of stuff.
Yeah. But there's that moment, like, where he's just like, this is a whole nother metaphor. He's like, I was mad because I'm not going to get to see my kids grow up because I'm stuck in this, like, I'll never see her wedding. But he's satisfied with the now, like, that's a great point, like, let's be satisfied with what we have now, like, and enjoy what we have now, like, I found that really stimulating and really interesting and great.
Yeah, no, how awesome is his situation where he actually gets to wake up every day with, like, not going to work.
Yeah.
He always gets to live in this awesome mansion, and his kids and wife are always alive and healthy. Yeah, it sucks that, like, he never gets to grow old, but, like, he's got, like, the best present he could possibly ask for.
Yeah, at first he hated it, like, and I do find that interesting. Do you think that, because at the very end, he finds out that he can leave, so do you think he leaves?
J.K. Simmons finds out he can leave?
Yeah, Christine, that character leaves, a voicemail for him. Remember at the very end?
Yeah. See, I was under the impression that whenever they left, they were literally blowing up the cave. But I assumed that, like, you know what I mean? Like, they had, like, a one chance to get out of there kind of situation.
Oh, well, yeah. I don't think I really got that. I think, kind of to me, the way this whole thing works is every day is like a different universe, right? And, like, so every time they wake up, they're in a parallel universe, and they're just kind of living those same days. That's why at the end, when J.K. Simmons shows up and Andy Samberg is there, and Andy Samberg's like, "Who are you? I don't know you." Whereas once they get out, they're like, I don't know. There's, like, some little things that are hard to explain, but, like, I just feel like there's parallel universes involved here. Is what I think. Which.
It may be, like, so they would be, like, basically replacing themselves in alternate universes and just disappearing their alternate versions of themselves each time.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about the alternate versions of themselves, but yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah, maybe. See, that may come into factor because she goes through, like, a whole lot of, like, they even mentioned parallel universes at some point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But the way she described it is, like, they're trapped in, like, a box of some sort. So it seems like I just kind of read it as they got trapped in some sort of, like, anomaly.
Oh, I see, yeah.
But it doesn't really matter because, like you said, unless we get a Palm Springs 2.
And honestly, those are all like, I don't care about the why of them being stuck there.
Exactly.
I mean, like,
it's kind of hand wavy in the movie because no one really cares.
Yeah, Groundhog Day. I never cared about that. It's about the journey that the characters go on. It is fun to try to like do the head thought experiment in your head.
Well, it's fun because in this movie, like she takes like every day to like educate herself and become a freaking physicist.
Yeah,
which is so cool.
Yeah.
So like, and I love how like they imply that like they lose track of time. You know what I mean? And like, so you have no idea how long Andy Samberg has been in this loop, and you have no idea how long she was in the loop. It could have been like 5 years worth of time, for her to
5 years of her just like, that's her just researching all the physics,
exactly.
like it could have been hundreds of years, really. He said he couldn't remember what he did as a job. So like, I it's all really interesting. I think the best moment though, the one that like made me kind of tear up a little bit, and it was just kind of awesome. And I also think this is the moment. I don't know why I think this, but I think Justin would really like this moment. It's the moment where like it's before they become romantically involved, right? They've had feelings for each other or whatever, but they're out in the wood or like out in the desert, and the dinosaurs show up, and it's just like, like. It's just a beautiful moment. And then put the dinosaurs on top of it, kind of a twist there. I thought that was really, really touching.
Yeah. So let me ask you, what do you think about those dinosaurs? Because you see them again at the end.
They're in the loop.
Yeah. So like do you think like it's not even like a real day? It's just like a pseudo day of like a copy of like a real day that existed where like someone got married, but then like it's also back in time.
I don't know. Yeah, like maybe the dinosaurs wandered into the cave at some point. Maybe I don't know exactly how that would work. Like the goat, once the goat goes through, and then he comes, like he's going through the loop. We see the goat at the end, even though we had blown up the goat too. So like it's kind of like this weird hard reset that they did, or I don't know.
Fascinating. So do you think they got out?
Yeah. Well, we see them.
That's true. Yeah, we see them like the next day, I guess.
Yeah, on their pizza.
But we still see the dinosaurs.
Well, I thought that was with the J.K. Simmons
you're right,
section of it.
You're right.
But I just thought that wasn't their world anymore. Maybe they just do August 10th over and over again now.
Yeah, so I guess they're like actually like stepping to another physical plane.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm going to have to study for 4 years to understand this movie.
Yeah, I guess so. Do you think it's interesting that he remembers his dog, but he can't remember what he did for a job?
Yeah.
I actually think he can remember what he did for his job. I think he just didn't want to let her in or talk about that stuff.
Yeah, I kind of thought that when I watched it too. He was obscuring it the same way that he was trying to obscure that he had sex with her before.
Right. It's just easier to not talk about those things.
Do you think he had sex with every single person at that wedding?
Maybe. He's there for years. He's got nothing else to do.
Yeah, it reminds me of a video game. Like we've all done it, like in Red Dead Revolver or whatever. Like you go back through the game and
Red Dead Revolver was like the original PlayStation 2.
Oh, Red Dead Redemption 2. But you go back through the game and like you're like, what can I do? And you just do the most random shit in the game,
Right.
And I think that's eventually what he did. And he's like, I'm gonna get the sleep with the bride's dad badge,
exactly. Yeah. It's like, why not try everything once at least?
Yeah. Well, and he has to like do it over and over again to get it right because, he has this whole routine worked out in how to, woo, the Christine character, the Christine Milioti actress. And so like, he has it all worked out. He has to do it over and over again so that he gets everything just right. And then he can sleep with her, so it's kind of unique. I like how he knows everybody within like a 20-mile radius. Like how many years did he spend at that bar? Like where he knows everybody there.
Yeah.
Like I find that, just fascinating. Like he's beaten this game, but he's still playing it is essentially, he's like, oh, there's Tom, and it's pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like he's beyond being bored.
Yeah.
Like it's just acceptance at this point. It's just kind of like just drinking. Essentially all day.
Yeah, I'm just going to sit in the pool and drink. And then if he wants to sleep with Christine Melotti's character, he's like, I'll make the speech tonight. Yeah,
essentially. So before they actually escaped, did you, like, what crossed my mind, and I don't think this is the case, but like, I was wondering, like, if they escaped, maybe like it could have been any one of the random days throughout the time they've been there. They could have been the one that like ended up being the actual yesterday.
Oh yeah, I did kind of think about that.
So like
too.
I was actually worried that like it would be like one of the speeches where like Niles went up there and like told everyone that the groom had sex with the bride's sister, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I was actually kind of like worried that when they got out of there, there'd be like another dramatic beat or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to live that last day exactly perfectly. And she kind of does. She gives a really good speech at the end. Like that final speech that she gives to her sister and, the groom. I found that good. I actually really, and it's a good joke too. That final speech that Andy Samberg gives to her, she's like, you have one sentence. And he's like, okay. And then he goes through the whole thing, comma, semicolon. And I thought that was a good speech. There's a good moment.
Yeah. He's like, that was a grammatical nightmare.
Yeah. I do like how she's like, I don't know. She's like, you can come with me or you can stay here, but I have to leave. Like it's about getting out of that. It's a bad relationship that they're in, essentially, is the way I see it. Like they had fun. They're goofing around, but ultimately they're not doing anything. They're not going anywhere.
Well, it's like the equivalent of like two addicts and one of them wanting to get clean, right?
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
one where like she wakes up having just had sex with like her sister's future husband, has to make her continually feel terrible about herself every morning.
Yeah, real shitty.
Yeah, and so it's like the equivalent of just like being on drugs or like being in a depression or a rut that like where you can never actually self-actualize because no matter how much growing you do, you're back at the start.
Yeah, the only you can all right, let me say that again. You can self-actualize yourself, but like you can be a physicist, but nobody's going to remember that you're a physicist. So you have to explain it again, anew every day, So it's tough.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, what would you do? How long could you last, and what would you do?
Yeah, and it'd be different if you had J.K. Simmons's like position, right, where he gets to wake up every day with his family.
Yeah,
like that would be a lot harder to give up. In her situation, I totally understand not wanting to live in this day forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of one of those things where it just kind of depends on where you're at in life. I mean, obviously, I think after a while, no matter what day you're living in, you would probably want to move on because eventually humans need to die. That's just what we need to do.
Yeah, it's
right?
a natural order of things.
Right, yeah, and I'm sure our brains will stop working after a certain amount of time where we just don't die. But, like Andy Samberg's situation where he had it, I think his is more of like, it's not a particularly good day. He's not near any of his friends or family, but he's comfortable and he's accepted it. And so like the known is less scary than the unknown now, because then he has to go back to living every day where anything could happen.
Right. And I find that really fascinating. I feel like there's like a whole nother, like there's like 6 or 7 movies about Andy Samberg's character stuck in the loop, because I think that there's like a whole sequence of him discovering his girlfriend is cheating on him and where he feels really hurt and upset about it. But he's gone through all those things. What is it? He says something like, I felt everything, and then therefore there's like nothing left for me to feel, or something like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. He's felt like pretty much every emotion. So like essentially he's never going to feel again.
Yeah, that's what it is. And because he's been through every single iteration, Anyways, I think it's really great.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I don't have very many more thoughts on Palm Springs other than just I really enjoyed it. And I think if you're still listening and you haven't seen it yet, then just go see it. It's on Hulu. It's a lot of fun. Yeah,
it's really great. It's worth the 2-week free trial of Hulu. Or if you have Spotify, you get Hulu for free anyways. So.
Yeah, and if you recently bought an iPhone, you can get a year of Apple TV.
and watch Greyhound.
Yep. All right. Do we have anything else that we want to talk about today, Chris?
No. I'm good.
Okay, so I guess that's our show. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Jake Wagner-Russell, for doing the intro and outro music. You can hear more of his music at www.soundcloud.com/bobscotch. Stay tuned to this feed. Next week, we'll be putting out another Casually Criterion on the 3rd film of the Apu trilogy, The World of Apu. We believe Justin will be back, but hey, he just got married, so we're not quite sure. So plans may change, but be safe, everyone.
Yes, please, man. Like it's rough out there. We live in Texas, and I actually live in Houston, where it's...
Yeah, not going great.
No.
Yeah, so... Our governor's an idiot. All right, anything else, Chris?
No, I'm good. Thanks for talking to me about Palm Springs.
No problem. By the way, once again, you can always like, follow, subscribe to the show, review us on iTunes, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can get a hold of us at casualcinecast. And yeah, everyone have a good evening, and hope you don't get trapped in a time loop.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you later.